Hello and welcome to the first episode of Raptors Pilgrimage. A ongoing yet entirely new vlog experience for me. And I say that because I've been titling the last, for the last 3 or 4 years, any recording I make, Raptors Pilgrimage. But this is sort of the first live stream vlog, Raptors Pilgrimage. So I should probably really come up with some way of differentiating between them all. But I honestly quite like the chaos, really, of it all. I kind of keep everything organized in my own mind. I suppose I should introduce myself, considering this is likely your first time here. My name is S01E01. Of course, that's a pseudonym. It's not my real name. It just is my moniker for all things that have to do with being a Raptor. And I'll get into what that means maybe a little later on in this video. I'll make a note of that. Talk about being Raptor. Sorry, I hate to do that right in the middle of, just as we're getting started, but a big part of what I want this to be is sort of a unscripted, unedited experience, where I feel like so much of what's on YouTube currently is edited in quick cuts, and it takes away from the realness of what performing really is. And that's something I want to get better at. A big part of the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to get better as a performer. I want to be better at improvisation. I want to get better at the snappy, quick cuts. And I mean, if you're a true fan, I suppose, and you've already watched season 0, episode 0, test 1, 2, 3, then I've already sort of mentioned all this. And I'll try not to cover too much of the same subject matter, but at the same time, I mean, myself included, and a lot of you maybe, if you're watching the recorded version of this, seeing as how there's no one here live currently, it might be the first time you're ever hearing me talk about a lot of these things. So certainly there will be a little bit of repetition. So I apologize for those of you who may be watching this in the future after later episodes, and I'm talking about things that I talk about then. It's a whole jumble of things, but this is mostly for me. So, I mean, I don't mind if I repeat myself. I'll try not to as much as possible, mostly to save time. But certainly if something I'm talking about applies, I don't want to just ignore it or just say, go back to this episode, especially because I'll probably lose track of what I've talked about in each subsequent episode. So, yeah. My name is S01E01. Now, that name, actually, let's just talk about that for a little bit, because this is really just introductions. This is really just me getting out who I am, what I'm doing, and trying to practice being able to talk about myself, really, getting comfortable doing it. I mean, it's super easy right now because there's nobody here. I'm just talking to myself, but it's the action. It's the process of actually doing so. Because once you hear things out loud, that sort of changes the nature of it. I mean, if you think a thought, what is that? It's personal. No one's going to hear it. There's no real value except for yourself. But I mean, everything I say here out loud might be watched by someone in the future. So I have to be careful. I have to be able to think quickly about what I want to say, and how I want to say it, so that I don't have to like end the stream and delete the video and then start all over again. I very much want it to be a very real experience for both me and for anyone who does end up watching. So Old as a Rune is a name that came from a dream I had of a cowboy wizard who rode from realm to realm on a train. He just basically, a train would show up via a portal. He would step onto it, and then it would disappear through another portal. And he would ride from realm to realm like that, just solving and fixing problems. It was a strange dream, but it was wonderful. He had long curly hair and this incredible hat. But he actually didn't even really have a name in the dream. I came up with the name afterwards, based off of some names that my now ex-girlfriend gave me at the time. We were texting, and I was telling her about the dream, and she was like, well, here's a bunch of words, a bunch of names that have meaning. And I just like the way that Aldous Rune, those two names, those two words, mesh together. And it stuck really quick. Like it wasn't even that, like I didn't hum and haw about it. It just, boom, Aldous Rune. I knew that's who it was. And I knew consequently that's who I was. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a great name in real life. And if you ever happen to know me personally, you may even wonder why I hide behind some false moniker. But truthfully, it's just because, I like a little bit of anonymity, and it's fun to have pseudonyms. It's fun to have screen names and false identities to sort of play with being unknown, a new person. Nobody knows me. So, and I really want to honor who I was at the time when I came up with that name, because I was a certain type of person and I really liked who I was. And so holding on to that name is like holding on to who I was in time then. But certainly another name I have, which, will make more sense given the title, is Raptor. And that name comes from video game experiences, playing Ark Survival Evolved. And I mean, I might as well tell the story. It's a fairly long story, but it's also fairly short. But in this sense, I mean, I didn't pick up the name immediately. The name sort of was an evolution of my experience of playing Ark Survival Evolved. But I really do love telling the story, and I might as well tell them. I mean, this is introductions. So where Aldous Rune comes from. Now you'll find out where Raptor comes from, and also the Raptors pilgrimage and why I stick with that. So Ark Survival Evolved, if you don't know, is a dinosaur sandbox farm simulator / building and crafting game. It's a survival game at its heart, but it's very much about building structures, complex structures from simple materials, and taking care of taming dinosaurs and other creatures, and just sort of having fun with that. It's like Minecraft and Jurassic Park meshed together, and it's a great game. So if you don't know it, I highly recommend looking it up and maybe spending some time playing it. But it's a very different game now than it was when I first started playing, and so I don't play very much anymore because I've just sort of lost my gift, I would say. There's too much change that was implemented into the game that makes it very hard to play the same way now as I used to then, without putting in so much time that I just don't have. I mean, I'm going back to school now, and my focus is on that, and I just don't have time. Whereas when I was playing Ark, I wasn't working, and I had nothing on the go. Or no, I think I started when I was working. I can't quite remember. My history is kind of all over the place, but we'll get to that maybe in a bit. Anyways, when I started playing Ark, I had a lot of time on my hands, is the point. And so I was able to put in hours and hours a day, close to 8, maybe even close to 16 hours a day, because I really just had nothing else to do. And I really, for a while, lived almost my life through Ark Survival Evolved. I mean, I still had to eat food and survive, but I lived on the island. I don't really think it even has a name besides just the island, and that's really all I know it as. I've never named it. Maybe I should do that. Give it a personal name. I've certainly, kind of jumping further ahead into the story. There are ruins dotted all over the island that were added as I was playing, and I found initially the first 90 to 99, I think of them, 90, 91. And I named them all. I gave them all special names. And I still have the list somewhere. But anyways, let me get to the beginning of the story. So a friend of mine introduced me to Ark Survival Evolved. He was playing, and he wanted me to play, and I couldn't afford it at the time because I wasn't working. And he bought it for me. Showed up and was just like, here, a gift, happy birthday. And I was like, thank you, because it sounded, the way he talked about it on Xbox Live when we would be in party chat together made it sound like it was so much fun, and I really did want to play it. So actually, you know what? No, he didn't buy it for me initially. Initially, I played the first hour free. I think it was like you had 1 to 2 hours free, and we played together. And I liked it, and he knew I liked it, so he bought it for me. I think that's how it went. Yeah, because I definitely played like for 2 hours for free. Anyways, we had so much fun in that 1 to 2 hours, and it was such a brand new experience. I mean, you wake up on a beach, and you have nothing. You're naked except for like underwear, and the whole game is a mystery, and you just have to survive. And I had no idea where I was. I had no idea where my friend was, and he had to find me. I had to give him a description of the beach, and he had to just run along the beach until he found me. And then once he found me, we joined a party, and then we built a cabin, and then survived. And without him, I would have died a lot. I mean, I died a lot, don't get me wrong, but without more. And yeah, anyways, just so much fun. And so when I started playing without him, once he bought it for me, and then I started playing, without him because he had to work, I had a lot of trouble. I struggled a lot, taming dinosaurs, surviving other fighting dinosaurs. And what I learned quickly, surviving other people, because it's a game where 70 people play on the same map. And it's a free-for-all. It's, especially because I played on PvP servers, player versus player. And they do have player versus environment servers where players can't fight each other or hurt each other. But I prefer to play on a real server. I consider it a real server where there's real challenges, because people can steal from you, people can kill you, and you have to adapt to that. And it was a steep learning curve, and I loved it. It was so fun. My first few days was just running along the beach, spawning in one area and trying to memorize the landscape and the features, trying to learn how to capture and tame animals. And I did. I was successful at taming some animals. But for whatever reason, they would all die. Either because the one in particular, I believe her name was Phoebe, the first parasaur I ever tamed. For those of you who have played Ark, taming your first parasaur is a real proud moment because you have to chase that thing down. They run fast, and I did it. And but the moment after I tamed it, it was like I had it for maybe a minute to a minute and a half. I get knocked unconscious, and a few moments later, on the screen it says Zach. Sorry, Zach. I knew it started with Z. Zach has killed your Phoebe. And I was heartbroken because it was one of the first creatures I'd ever tamed, and I had lost it in a matter of minutes. He must have been stalking me. I mean, what are the chances he just arrived? I have no idea. But he killed me, and then he killed Phoebe, and I learned a hard lesson that day that just you got to be careful. You can't just tame an animal willy-nilly. If you're not going to be able to protect it, because you might as well have just killed it yourself. And I mean, I'm telling this story as though it were real, because, like I said, I was living this game. This game was real to me. These experiences are part of my history. When you play a game as much as I did, every moment is a lesson, and a real life lesson, in a sense. I mean, I actually even wrote an essay in English class just recently, last semester, about the 2 essays actually, about these experiences, because they're so fresh and they're so real to me that writing about them is so easy. And I think my teacher probably laughed a little bit, because he's reading these essays and they're about video games, and it's like, this has nothing. How does this apply to real life? And those were mostly his notes, was that I wasn't quite tying it into real life. And I was upset at that, because for me, the lesson was about real life. Like, I didn't need to explain how it applied to real life, because to me it was obvious. So it's something I have to learn how to do, is sort of express what I learned from, and how I can apply what I learned to real life. And mostly what I learned was from that first experience. I mean, if I'm going to talk about it, really was that you don't do anything unless you're prepared for the responsibility of doing it. And an example of that, I mean, if we're gonna apply it to the real world, is, I mean, I've always wanted a dog in real life, but I mean, can I afford one? Do I have the time to give the kind of attention that a dog needs to it and to take care of it? No. So I don't have a dog. But I know one day I will, because one day I will be able to take care of the responsibility. Now, in real life, someone isn't likely going to show up and then kill my dog and kill me. I mean, that just doesn't happen anymore. But the heart of that experience, the heart of what happened that day, still applies. I wasn't prepared for being able to protect in that environment, because that's really what you have to look at, is what environment are you in. In the real world, the environment is quite safe, especially in North America. In this video game, the environment is extremely hostile and dangerous, and I just wasn't prepared to take care of and protect that dinosaur. So I really, honestly, didn't deserve it, because if it wasn't Zach, it would have been somebody else. And I'm honestly kind of glad he taught me that lesson, because I learned, okay, build a base first, and then build walls that you can protect your dinosaurs behind with. But I mean, that came with consequences of its own, where I learned quickly that if you're by yourself, if you play solo, you've got the entire world against you. The entire world. I mean, it's only 69 other players at max, but when you play by yourself, you've got no one to rely on but yourself. And I learned a lot playing that way. I mean, when I played with my friend, he liked mostly playing PvE, and that bored me to tears. So I really didn't play with him as much as he probably would have liked. But he didn't like playing player versus player because it was too much of a challenge. You lost too much. And that's really what I'm trying to get at, is when you're playing in player versus player, again, anyone can steal from you. Anyone can kill you. Anyone can destroy your things that you've built, and you lose so much. All your hard work disappears. You can build a whole base and then go to bed, wake up the next day to play, and it's all gone. It's been destroyed. And it's heartbreaking, because how much time did you take? You might have spent 8 to 16 hours building that, and it's gone in a heartbeat. And so I learned quickly that if I didn't want to waste time, I didn't build anything. But it took me a while to learn that, and I did build a lot along the way. And but it took me a while to get there. So I'll try and fast forward through most of the first week or so, because a lot of the stories are the same. I mean, I meet somebody, they try and befriend me, they betray me, they kill me, they steal what I have. Especially because I didn't have a mic, so I wasn't able to communicate very well with other people. I could only use the in-game chat box, the global chat as it is, to communicate, and it's very slow because you have to just one letter at a time using your controller type into the chat box, and see, communication is very, very limited. Anyways, so I learned quickly that I needed to build structures to defend myself with, not just from people, but from the in-game creatures. I mean, there were Tyrannosaurus rexes, Carnosaurus, I can't remember, Carnotaurus. Lots of carnivores is what I'm getting at. And one in particular was the raptor. I mean, the saber-toothed tiger was pretty much one of my arch enemies in the beginning, but the deadliest was the raptor. And the reason for that was because they were so quiet, and they could spot you from so far away, and you didn't hear them until the very last second when you hear their hiss. And they'd sneak up on me all the time and kill me. So they very much were something that I was afraid of. I was afraid of the raptor. And I associated other players with raptors because other players were even quieter. You could barely hear them running around on the beaches, and they would just attack you without a thought, and because they're people, they can spot you from even further away than a raptor. So, this idea of a raptor became my arch enemy, became my fear, and the thing that I fought against, really. And anyway, so I think it was about a week of playing, roughly, when I eventually grew so sick and tired of trying to build on my own. I found 2 large bases, and I built in between them, and up on a hill. So not directly in between them, but up on a hill that was situated, roughly equidistant between them. And I started to build a little house and walls, spiked walls to protect myself with. and I started taming some dinosaurs, and I was quite happy. It was quite safe there because these bigger tribes were taking care of all of the competition. You know, they were killing all the dinosaurs that would have been a threat to me, and other players wouldn't go nearby because, you know, they didn't want to be taken out by these bigger tribes. And but I'll be honest, at this time I still didn't quite understand the threat of a bigger tribe. I kind of blindly trusted that a big tribe would be much safer than a single player who's got no allegiance to anybody. And it's still sort of true in the sense that, you know, they have a reputation to uphold as far as the server goes, a tribe. And so they behave a little bit more democratically, or maybe that's not the word, but civilized, I guess is the word I'm looking for, rather than just being helter-skelter. But what comes with that, because they're a big tribe, is this pompous attitude that I learned quickly that they have. And so the story goes, you know, I've built up this little base, and I'm there for maybe a day or two, so not very long. But as far as how long I've been playing in total, quite a long time. And you know, I'm running around on the beach and hunting dodos, these small chicken kind of birds, for meat and hide, so I can build more walls and build a better base. And there's a alpha raptor on the beach further down near one of the big bases, and just dominating the beach. Like, you do not fight an alpha raptor when you're a lowbie like me. And I kind of just left, you know, so clearly I left him alone. So I'm just trying to remember what happened next. Anyway, so I move closer to the other base. You know, I don't remember what the name of one of the two tribes was, but I remember the one that I had on altercation with, which I'll tell you about in a second, was the Unsullied tribe. You know, they named themselves after the Unsullied from Game of Thrones, although I don't think I knew that reference at the time. They were just, so in my mind, this is the first time I was really experiencing the Unsullied. And anyways, you know, I'm killing dodos outside their base, and then I come across one dodo that has a name. And so I immediately realize that this is one of their dodos. And somehow it's escaped their base, and it's just wandering around on the beach. Well, in my mind, there's an alpha raptor just down the beach, and he's making his way in this direction. So this dodo is going to die, regardless, you know, of me. It's going to die, whether by that alpha raptor or another threat that comes along. At some point, this dodo is going to die. And so I just kind of, you know, quickly, I made this decision in a second. Like, I'm not saying I gave this a whole lot of thought. I didn't sit there and philosophize about the life of this dodo. I just quickly realized, oh, this dodo is going to die, so I'm going to kill it. And I killed it in probably like less than 10 seconds. That's how fast I made the decision. It was like within 10 seconds, I just, you know, killed it, and then carved it up, took the meat, took the hide, and went about my merry way. Well, what I didn't know at the time, because I thought I was going to get away scot-free, I didn't know at the time that when you're in a tribe, because I'd never been part of a tribe before, or to a degree with which I was taking advantage of tribe resources, like the fact that when one of your animals is killed, it tells you, there's a tribe log that tells you who killed your animal. And I didn't know that. I thought I was going to get away scot-free. Like, they'll never know who killed it. That was part of why I chose to do it, was because I figured it would just go down as a mystery. You know, how did our chicken die? And anyway, so I log off for the night a few hours later, probably. And when I log back on, I'm in a cage. And on the wall it says, "You pay for dodo crime." And I was like, what? How did they know it was me? I was so freaked out. I was like, this is crazy. How could they know it me? And I was raging. I was so mad. And so, to escape, I basically just punched the wall till I died and then respawned. And when I went back to my base, it was destroyed. It was gone. My animals were all dead. And there was barely there was like, if they could have left a crater, there would have been a crater where my house was. And there may even have been a sign placed on the ground, but I can't remember, and I don't think there was, because the sign became my weapon. I think the only sign they ever left was the one on the wall that said, "You pay for dodo crime." Anyways, and so I was furious. Like, seriously? I kill one of your dodos, the lowest animal on the totem pole, and you destroy my whole base and kill all my animals. Wow, that's justice. And I was so furious. So I built a couple of signs, went up to their base, as far away as I had to be, to place down the sign, and put down like 4 or 5. And they said in progression something along the lines of, "Give me back my stuff," or "This is war." And then on the very last one, I turned sideways. So most of them were lined up like this. And then the very last one I put sideways. And I put Han Dodo tastes delicious. Because that's what the dodo's name was Han Dodo. And I'll never forget that name. And anyways, and then I just disappeared, and then I just left. I went to the other side of the island, because in my mind, the island was still huge. I mean, looking back on it now, it's still a large island, but relatively, because there's only so many places you can go. It's a very small island. And especially if you have dinosaurs that you can ride and fly around on, it's an even smaller island. But at the time, I thought, I'm going to be the furthest away that I can go. And so I went and started building on a different beach halfway across the map, and made friends with another tribe, the leaders of the new school. And they liked me right away, and they thought I was adorable the way I just built this small little hut, and I put a sign up in front of it that said Aldo's Palace. And it was just hidden behind a rock near their base. And they left me alone, and they even gave me some stuff. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to build universal trading posts. That's what I'm going to spend my time doing. These universal, anybody can use them, trading posts. And the design of them was to be such that there were, they would be havens for people who were being chased by raptors and saber-tooths. They were a tower with spiked walls coming off of them in such a way that it kind of looked like a raptor's talon. And then on the top, there was a platform with ladders coming down so that players could climb up and then be safe from the raptor. And then inside, there was a chest where players could take and leave items for other players. And the idea was that it was going to be a trading post for other players like me, for players who wanted to play alone but sort of play together. Anyways, it was like a day. It wasn't even a day when the other players found me, the Unsullied. They came and they found me, and they showed up at my tower. And they may even have been talking about me in chat or something, and that's how they discovered where I was. I don't know. But I was already becoming quite famous at the time, and I didn't really even realize it. But they showed up and they demanded an apology. They're like, "Apologize." I was like, "No, you apologize. You destroyed my home. You destroyed all my animals. I killed one of your dodos, and it was because it was out on the beach. Like, I was completely justified, and still am in my mind. Like, I'm completely justified in what I did. Because again, they didn't deserve that dodo. I mean, whether they accidentally forgot it while it was out or whether it glitched through the wall, doesn't matter. If you can't protect it, you don't deserve it. That's what I learned from that lesson, from before with my first dinosaur. And I applied that liberally with other players, because you had to be ruthless, because other players were ruthless, clearly. And if you didn't match fire with fire, then you were just going to get walked over. And I wasn't allowing myself to be walked over. And so they destroyed my tower because I wouldn't apologize. Clearly these guys are just a bunch of assholes. And they destroyed my tower and just showed me their true colors. Like, these guys aren't deserving of an apology. They're just bullies walking around. And they really set the standard in my mind for every other tribe. I mean, I'm sure there were alpha tribes or big tribes out there in the game who were good people and treated other smaller tribes and single players well. They probably, with respect and whatnot. But the majority of alpha tribes, big tribes, were just out to stomp and destroy other players' sandcastles. And I learned that very quickly. Anyways, and so I think I ran, but I learned his name. That was the day I learned his name, Jake of the Unsullied. He's the one who owned that dodo because he's the one who demanded the apology. And so I found a keyboard and I plugged it into my Xbox so that I could type in the global chat faster. And I started to, you could call it bullying, but I just started to call him out on his shit in chat. And I would say, so, like, every time he could send one message, I could send 10 or 12 so fast, and long messages. Like, I could type a lot in the time he could respond to one. So I just peppered him constantly and made fun of him so much in the chat. Like, oh, you're such a baby whining over your dead bird. Why don't you just tame another one? No. I'd say, I can't even remember the things I said, but I was ruthless. I became a scourge and very much disliked on that server. I'm sure there were people who thought I was entertaining, but the majority of people, or the majority of the vocal people, I should say, were hated me because I owned the chat. And anyways, at some point, I can't remember how many times, but Jake captured me and put me in a cage. And that was beautiful because I had more time then to just say things to him because I didn't have to survive on the island. I didn't have any threats with which to defend myself from or run away from or survive from. And it was counterintuitive. Like, he would catch me and I would just say more shit. And he got so mad. But one day, and I'll never forget this, I'm trapped in the cage. I'm yelling things at him. And he walks up to the cage and he says, "I love you." He types it, "I love you." And it pops up above his head and I'm speechless. I just didn't know what to say. So, but then I just kept saying more. I just kept, because clearly he's loving this. He loves the attention as much as I do. Because I was loving it. Somebody's chasing me. Somebody's spending their time in this game hunting me down. It's like the greatest game of hide and go seek. And we have this relationship, of arch nemesis. And where else in the world do you get that? Where else in life can you experience that? So it was incredible. I loved it. And I don't really remember why it stopped. I'll be honest. I think it was something in my personal life that got in the way of me playing for a few months, and I wasn't online for a while. And when I came back, he wasn't playing anymore. I think that's what happened. Um, but I knew who I was at the time. Like, that whole experience set me up to be really who I am now. But it was, oh, right. It was one. This is coming back to, this is where the moniker of Raptor came from. Was one time I was in the cage. I was trapped in the cage. It might have been the first or the second time. And I started calling him Dodo. And he hated, that was what got him the hottest, you know. He vehemently hated being called Dodo. And I was like, I'm the Raptor. I'm the thing that you're afraid of because I'm in the cage. Clearly, I'm more dangerous than you. You're afraid of me. You chase me down and capture me to put me somewhere safe where I'm not gonna, because I mean, I wasn't great at it, but I would hunt him with spears, and not very successfully, but and this was more me just trying to find an edge somewhere. But that's really where it came from. Was I decided, you know what? I'm no longer going to be afraid. I'm going to own this, and I'm going to be the thing that other players are afraid of. I'm going to be. I really took on that um, persona. I spent so much time learning everything there was to know about surviving on the island with very little, without building many structures. I mostly just built spears and bows, and ran. Whenever I would level up, I would just put into speed so I could run faster and outrun things. And I learned how to kill everything, every big dinosaur that there was, um, with just that, with just small buildings and spears. And I called them my talons. My weapons were my talons, and I became so adept at the game that I could live pretty much anywhere on the island, even the most dangerous places, without fear of being killed. And I lost my fear of being killed anyways, because I realized it was a superpower, that if I died, I had very little to lose and I could regain it very quickly. And then I could just respawn anywhere. So if I died, it was really not that big a deal. Whereas these other players were terrified of death, because they could lose so much. The armor that they're wearing, they could lose a tame like a dinosaur. And so I had this edge on everybody, where I had nothing to live for except the thrill of the hunt. And I would just taunt other players in chat, and I was the king of the chat. Nobody could beat me, because it's like nobody knew they could plug in a keyboard, or they just didn't have a keyboard to plug in. And so I was very vocal all the time, because that's what I learned when I was in the cage. I realized that the developers set the game up in such a way that you still had freedom even when you were in a cage. Even when other players were trapping you and you had nowhere to go, you could still express yourself and still have fun playing the game through the chat, because no one could shut you up. And so I learned that, and I basically became king of the chat. And I went to other servers and just did the same thing. And I tried to spread this idea. And it caught on to a degree. It caught on to such a degree where when I mentioned that I was a Raptor, players knew what I meant. They knew they called me a troll, but to me, there was more to it than just being hostile. there was honor in being a Raptor, and it developed over time. This idea, and maybe I'll talk about it in future episodes, or maybe I'll talk about it now. I'm not sure. I don't really know, and I can't really remember when. I think it was quite a while. I played for a long time like that. Where I just hunted other players. That was my thing. I just hid in the forests. I ran around and attacked people. But the key was that I never attacked anyone without giving them an opportunity. Like, I didn't just run up and knock somebody out before they had the chance to fight back. I mean, I usually ran out and got the first strike, because that was something that was very important to me, was getting the first strike. It proved that I had the upper hand. But typically, I would run up and I would say, "Let's play tag. 1, 2, 3, go." And then I would fist fight people. And if they pulled out a spear, then I pulled out a spear. So I always gave people the opportunity to defend themselves and to fight back in whatever way they wanted to retaliate, or in any way they could, because most people, especially the newest players, didn't know what to do, didn't know how to have spears. So I sort of was the teacher for a lot of players, teaching them that the game is hostile, and you have to get strong very quickly, get fast, get strong, and fight back, and learn to fight back. And I think I was very fair. I mean, I was ruthless at it, but I was very, very fair. And that's where there was sort of honor to what I was doing, where I made sure that other players weren't being, like, I didn't bully them. I was playing with them. I was having fun with them. And typically, like, what I would do is, if I knocked somebody out by punching them, I would then leave a note on their body that they could read when they woke up that said, "Good job, nice try, let's do it again." And it's just little stuff, or tag, you're it. Just fun little notes, just to let them know that I wasn't a mean person, mean-spirited. I was just here to have fun, and this was the game. Like, get used to it. This is the game. Other people might play differently, but this is how I play, and I'm part of this game. I'm part of the community. I'm part of the environment. So you have to learn to deal with me and the way that I play. And a lot of people, they got it really fast, and they played along. They'd fight me back, and sometimes I lost. Most of the time I won. I was pretty damn good, but sometimes I lost, and sometimes I'd even let them win, just so that they'd want to keep playing. I mean, that's something that happened. I did a lot of the time too, is I would just let them win, to give them confidence, to give them a little boost of spirit, and give them a taste for it, so that they want to keep playing the game my way, the way that I saw the game. Because so many people, they built these bases, and they had so many teams, and they had to take care of them, and they were basically playing Farmville, with dinosaurs. And I was so bored with that. My way was so thrilling and exciting. It was exhilarating, is what it was. That's the word I'm looking for. It was exhilarating. It got my heart pumping. And this one time I met this guy, and I believe his name, I can't remember. It started with a D. I don't remember if it was Dale or Daniel or Dwight. No, it wasn't Dwight. But one day I met this guy who liked me so much that when he won, he didn't kill me. He let me get back up to continue fighting. And that was something that a lot of players didn't do, that when they won, they would finish me off and kill me. They wanted the satisfaction. There was a little, they wanted vengeance, you know, because to them losing meant something different than it did for me. Losing to me was a win in a different way. I was able to mentally see every loss as a different kind of win, in that I learned a lesson, you know, because something key about this environment, this digital virtual environment, is that there's no real consequences to dying or losing, you know, because it's infinite. You just respawn, you come back, and you can try again. You lose really when you lose hours of your work. When someone destroys your base, then you really lose, because you've lost hours of your time, and that you can't get back. So that's why I played differently, was because I didn't want to lose that time anymore. I wanted to win all the time. And so I would win by learning from every experience, because they can't take away your experience. They can only take away what you've created. And so I didn't give them it. That was the thing. I didn't give them anything that they could take away from me. I only gave them what I was willing to lose. And my life was something I was willing to lose all the time. And because again, I would just learn from it. I would learn something about that person. Anyway, so this guy, we'll call him Dale. God, I wish I could remember his name. It did start with a D, and I don't think it was Dale. It's gonna bother me. Anyways, sorry. I don't want to take too much time just sitting here in silence trying to think of his name. He picked up on what I was doing very quickly. He read the notes I left on his body when I won, and he got that it was a game. And he liked it, because when he would beat me and I would fall unconscious, he would let me live, and he'd wait till I woke up, and then we'd fight again. And we did that for hours. I mean, maybe not for hours, maybe for a grand total of like a half an hour, but it felt like hours, felt like a lot of time. And we gave each other time to regain health and recuperate. And we chatted a little bit, but when we chatted, it was in this stunted, oh my God, I got the story wrong. I got the story completely wrong. I didn't have a keyboard yet. That came even later. I was a scourge. The reason people didn't like me so much was because when I would talk in chat, it was with this stunted, brutish, grunty kind of English. Because I was trying to say so much with so little time. I got very good at saying things with few words. And so it was annoying for people to read. And so a big part of my persona was this like, I'm a caveman kind of identity. And it didn't come till later, when I finally realized I had a keyboard at home that I could plug in, that I could type faster. And I can't really remember when that happened, but I forgot. I can't believe I forgot. Yeah, I didn't always have a keyboard. It was this stunted English. And so when I talked to him like that, he picked up on it, and he mirrored that. He talked back with this stunted, brutish English. And God, it was great. It was so weird to have somebody, emulate you, who mirrors everything you're putting out, who is picking up on your play style, your personality traits, and giving it back to you. I mean, in his own way, he was still his own person, and he's still his own player and everything. But he was picking up on my, what do you call it? My style. He was picking up on my style, and he liked it. And so I, when he asked me to join his tribe, I said, Raptors don't play in tribes. Raptors play alone. And he accepted that. He didn't even question it. He just was like, okay. But we would still play together. And so we started fighting, then we started hunting other players together, and we're very successful at it. And I have to say quickly, all of this happened meeting him in one play session, because after this play session, I'll sort of not sure what I should do. Recording. There we go. It's gone. Bigger dinosaurs together. And this real acceptance of who I was, without many words. Somebody liked me for me, and wanted to be, and in a sense, I wanted to be that engaged player. Yeah, it was just an incredible experience. But I learned then that I could pass it on. That's when I learned that I could pass on this idea of how to play the game to others. And later on, I actually was able to build small armies of players very quickly out of new players. It's harder to do with players who are in tribes and have established themselves, because they're sort of solid in how they think of the game and how they think about playing it. But when you run around on the beach and you collect a group of players who are brand new, either to the server or to the game, who have no ties with anybody, people want community, and it's this weird they really, I don't know if it's engaged with that. People respond extremely and then we'd fight the next person, and that would be, and it would snowball, because now the next person, I don't even have to fight alone. I fight with somebody, and we dominate them, and then we say, okay, now fight with us. Let's go get somebody else, and then it builds until you've got 5, 6, 7 people running around, and you're unstoppable, and you're a scourge. And I could do it so quickly and so easily, and it was so fun. Yeah. Anyways, I got to go back though to a story about where the day I realized I was the raptor. Because the story about Jake being the dodo in the cage, after I had an experience with an actual raptor. My perspective of who I was. It was when I was chasing a parasaur. I was hunting a parasaur. I was at that point in the game where I matched the parasaur, so I couldn't overtake it, but I could run as fast as it. And so I could, if I ran in just the right way, I could keep up with it. And sometimes if I cut it off, I could actually, And anyways, I was chasing this parasaur, and I was chasing her for a while. And I looked to my right, and there was a raptor running with me. The raptor was aggroed on, and we were running together chasing it. And once, and then kept chasing the parrot. So we kept running. I hadn't quite fully understood, like I hadn't absorbed what was happening at the moment. So I still was in my mind like, oh, a raptor, let's fight it, and so I ran up to the raptor and I poked it with my spear, and it stopped, turned around, bit me, ran away, bit a triceratops, and then ran back at me. And then the triceratops ran into me and killed me. And I'll never forget that night, because it changed. Like, it made me feel like this. When I looked back on it, when I was like, okay, what just happened? I'm sitting there on death screen looking at it thinking, what the hell just transpired? And it started to dawn on me, like there was this moment where me and the raptor were together and I was its equal and I wasn't afraid of it. And that was the moment when I realized I had become a raptor. I was no longer afraid of them. And that whole experience, the way it behaved around me, was very abnormal. And next time Jake caught me and I was in his cage, and I realized, again, I am this thing, this dangerous thing that sneaks up and that he's afraid of. I have power over him. He's afraid of me. And again, I was still talking in that stunted English, and so I was saying simple things like, you're just dodo. You're a dodo. And God, yeah, it was so great. But that's where that came from. And anyway, so I mean, there's so much more to the story. As time goes on, there's so much. I learned so much because I started to change the way I played the game a bit, where I even tried for a while to actually set down roots. I tried playing normally on other servers and trying to build up a base and tame dinosaurs, and I got quite far and was successful in making relationships with other tribes so that I was, pretty safe. Like, they weren't just going to attack me, because they respected me and I respected them, and I learned a different way of playing the game. It's when I realized I could learn something from playing a different way, and I learned how to be diplomatic and make relationships and maintain those relationships and have trading agreements. And I mean, it sounds all technical. I mean, it's just a game, but it's really complicated, and it was really fun to play that way for a while. But I was always drawn to playing, in my mind, the real way. And I made some really great friends, actually, through being a raptor. When I finally started playing with a mic, and I could talk to people, they responded to me in a way that I'll never forget. They liked me. They liked who I was. They liked that I was this sort of crazy, headless chicken, or maybe not headless, just crazy chicken running around, being a psycho and having fun. I was making the game fun for people, because I wasn't just killing them and stealing everything they had. I was just attacking them and making them feel threatened, but then letting them go. And so I was teaching them that there was danger, but I wasn't punishing them like other players did. And so they saw me more as this sort of benevolent force. And most of the big tribes, I mean, I would hunt them and was moderately successful at it. But they mostly regarded me as just a nuisance. And it was mostly the other players who were brand new, fresh to the game, who saw me as almost a god. And it was in this life, where you're regarded by so many people as being unstoppable, an unstoppable force. You're just so magnetic. You're so your personality, your behavior, your persona is so it's like a virus. I don't know how any other way of saying it other than it's infectious. That's the word I'm looking for, is infectious. And so going on, so I guess I can fast forward quite a bit. I built boats for a while. I got really into building boats in the game and selling them to people because I was good at it. And but the game got boring after a while, and I realized I needed a challenge. And so I came up with this idea, and I don't really remember how I came up with this idea of a pilgrimage. But one day I just knew it was something I had to do. And what it essentially was this goal of carrying or traveling with a dodo bird from one side of the island all the way around to the other, along the beach, and doing it with nothing but spears. I mean, there were a few ways of doing it. You could do it with nothing at all, and then nothing but spears, or nothing but a bow, and so many ways of doing it. And I did it. And I mean, I don't think I ever did it without, because you have to be extremely lucky if you're going to do it without any bows or spears. But I definitely did it with spears and killing any threatening carnivores along the way, and traveling with a dodo all the way around. And that to me was like my graduation. The thing that solidified me as a raptor, more than anything else, was that I had tamed the island. I was master of it. I could do anything. And then, of course, there was the time I ran the entire island. I ran the whole thing. I mean, I had it basically memorized, but I looked for all of the ruins, and so I had to run every square inch of the island in order to make sure I didn't miss a single one. And I found like 91 of them or something like that, and I named them all. And again, I still have that list somewhere. There's a few names that I'll never forget: Azeraval, Sariksi, Zialingana, Voler Capella, Mokinbichi, Himmelstap, and the list goes on. I'm not going to name all 90 of them. I couldn't even, but yeah, a lot of my life I spent, not a whole lot of my life comparatively to the rest of it, but in a sense, at the time, if you think of there being different kinds of affinities, meaning, within the last 24 hours, how much of this game have you played? Within the last 2 months, how much of this game you played? At the time, within the last 2 years, I had played a lot. And it was who I was. It was it was my identity, and it's sort of carried on into, like, that's who I still want to be. I mean, I take all the lessons I learned. I mean, the real world isn't as hostile and isn't as forgiving for people of being so hostile. But again, that's where you have to look at what environment you're in. I mean, I was in a PvP environment where there were other players out to get me. How am I going to respond to that? That's how I responded. And I did with as much honor as I could. I respected other players and treated them with respect. Maybe I was a little vehement in the way I spoke to them sometimes. I mean, I definitely said things I'm not always proud of. I'm not going to say I was always the most honorable, but I definitely played with a lot more honor than I think a lot of other players who just bullied each other and just taught each other that there was no, unless you were in a tribe, unless you sucked my dick, you weren't going to have any fun. Because that's what a lot of players did. They'd show up on a server and they'd say, like, oh, I'll do work for you if I can be in your tribe. And it's like, that's not how I wanted to play. I didn't want to just be somebody's bitch labor, in order to have a little bit of safety. I'd rather learn how to protect myself on my own and learn how to escape and learn how to hide and learn how to run and fight back. And that's what I did. And I was really successful at it. And I actually was a scourge to a lot of tribes. I actually defeated one alpha tribe by destroying their defenses without them knowing. And I mean, I didn't ultimately deal the final blow. It was another tribe, but I certainly opened the door, if you know what I mean. I picked the lock that let the other tribe come in. And these were two tribes who were allies. They were allies. The one tribe that destroyed the other. They were allies. But because I destroyed their defenses, there was nothing stopping them now. And that goes back to the point where a lot of these tribes, the only reason they didn't fight each other was because they were equal strength. Most players, anyone who's their own strength level or greater, and they only fight those who are weaker than them. And that was exactly the opposite of the way that I played. I always attacked anyone who was my own strength or greater. And if somebody was weaker than me, then I brought myself down to their level to level the playing field. That was my motto. That was my edict. And I loved it. I was so good at it. And again, I had such a strong response to it. And so it's who I am and it's who I am become. So I am the Raptor. I am Raptor. And this is my Raptors pilgrimage. This is me. The pilgrimage really means it's my journey. And I mean, a pilgrimage, there's a destination. And there's an obstacle, I mean, my original pilgrimage, the goal was to get that dodo all the way around the island, and you could succeed at it. This pilgrimage is a lot more open-ended. This pilgrimage is about life and is about me growing continuously without end. So it's a bit different. The pilgrimage is ultimately to achieve true satisfaction, I suppose. Because something that I have to live with in life is that I don't feel a lot of emotions. If we're going to get real personal here now that I've told you a lot about my gaming history and where my names come from, I'm not a true sociopath. but I resemble one in the sense that I understand what having zero empathy is like. I have empathy, I feel it, but I don't have to show it, because I understand empathy at such a perfect degree. Like, I mean, I couldn't give you the definition of empathy, and I'm not saying I'm a scholar in that sense. What I mean is my working understanding of empathy is perfect. My natural born understanding of empathy is so perfect that I can absolutely live without it. I can absolve myself of it, and behave as though I were a person with no empathy, and to such a degree that sometimes I even wonder, and I look at this feeling of never-ending ennui and sadness, depression. I mean, I've talked about it a lot with other people about how I live with sort of three moods. I should say I have about three moods. I have completely down in the dumps. I'm depressed, and I think the world is about to end, and I'm going to die unhappy. Or I'm extremely happy. The world is great. I love everything, and nothing can stop me. Or where I live most of my life is right in between. And there's no middle ground. I switch between the three like ridiculously fast. And I can almost control it. It's almost to the point where I'm so aware of this behavior in me that I can control my mood. And that's why I live most of my life like this, because I'm sort of in this constant state of being between both, that I'm just right here. It's kind of like when the Hulk in the Avengers movie says, "I'm always angry." That's how he maintains his, control over being the Hulk, is he's just always angry. That's sort of what I mean, is I stay always sad and always happy simultaneously, and I maintain this sort of medium ground. And when I was a kid, when I was younger, I think I was unaware of this, and I sort of stayed like this all the time because it was a choice. I knew I could choose to be like this. But the problem was that because of that, I was never accounting, like no one was ever aware of how depressed I really was. No one was ever aware of how unhappy and sad I was all the time, because I was not pretending. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am happy. I am ecstatic and excited about life. But what I mean is, it's complicated, and it's really hard to describe. And I'm probably doing not a very good job of it right now. But that's me. And so how that applies to being this pilgrimage is the goal, I suppose, of my overall pilgrimage is to teach myself how to be maybe like this. So between extremely oversatisfied with life and neutral, and be somewhere right here. This is where I'd like to be, at a 45-degree angle. I think that's where I'd be happiest. But it's hard. I don't know how to get there. So that's what this vlog, this thing is sort of all about, is learning how to express myself and talk about myself in such a way that I learn from talking out loud. I learn hopefully from, like, even right in this moment, just talking about all that. I mean, I've learned how to express I mean, I've mentioned it. Like I said, I mentioned it to other people in the past, but I've never really talked about it with myself, such that I could go back and listen to myself talk about it. So, yeah. Been talking for a while now, about an hour and 20 minutes. It's a long time. I feel like this is a pretty good introduction. Pretty good. Maybe I'll try and have more scripted, more specific things to talk about. I kind of just went helter-skelter into this because I want this to feel unscripted to a degree. I mean, I want to come in with not a script, but a list of things to touch on and talk about, and so that it's not long silences. It's not filled with too many long silences. But I don't want it to be edited. Too many edits or tiddids. Edited. I don't want it to be edited heavily or at all. I want it to be real and painfully so. Painfully so. Because that's life. Life is painfully unedited. And plus, I don't want to spend the time. That's a big part of it. I just don't want to spend the time editing. So yeah, I think. Well, no, I don't want to stop though. I just don't know what to talk about right now. I mean, maybe if I talked about what I talked about in season 0, episode 0, test 1, 2, 3. But that, what would be the point of having talked about it then? I don't know. So maybe I'll come back when I have more to talk about, but at least now you know who I am. You know where all the Zerun comes from. You know where Raptor comes from. You know where Raptor's pilgrimage comes from. And well, maybe before I leave, I'll talk a bit about what it means to be a Raptor and what I've developed as far as being a Raptor means. So honor was a key word I used earlier. Is this sense of honor, but conflict is something that is a huge part of what it means to be a Raptor. Is not avoiding it, is not shying away from conflict, and sticking up for what you believe in is another huge part of being a Raptor. But conflict and resolution, meaning you're striving through conflict to find a resolution, to answer the question, to complete the puzzle, and so conflict might not always mean butting heads with other people. It can mean butting heads with just a mathematical quandary or homework. Homework is a conflict, something you have to do, and so you don't shy away from anything like that, and you take life head on, and you embrace every aspect of it, even the parts that are uncomfortable and unpleasant, and you learn from it, and you take your losses as wins. You learn from every mistake, and there's so much. Yeah, I really need to sit down one day and really try and hammer out and express what it means to be a Raptor, because it's not really much different from just being a good person, but it's personal to me in the sense that it takes advantage of everything I learned playing Ark Survival Evolved, meaning I don't think I was a bad person. and I'll never ever convince myself or let myself be convinced that I was a bad person for killing Han Dodo or for attacking any of those other players, because that was the environment we were in. It was a game, and we were playing that game, and I played it ruthlessly, but I played it fairly, and that shaped how I look forward in the world. Now, how that applies to say going to university and going to school and dealing with other classmates, I'm not going to show up to class, and I'm not going to, threaten anybody or attack anybody or be vehemently outspoken, because it's a completely different environment. I mean, it's the real world. People should be respected, and people should be, not, what am I trying to say is but I'm going to treat everyone in a similar manner. Meaning, actually, you know what? I don't even quite know what I mean. But that's why I want to talk about it. That's why I'm doing this at all. It's because I don't quite see how it applies. I know it does. I'm just, the lessons aren't always as clear as like it was with the parasaur, where I learned that if you're not ready for responsibility, you don't deserve it. That's a clear lesson that applies across the board. But, I suppose fairness, in a sense, I don't know. It's not so clear when there's no clear conflict, when there's no clear enemy. In Ark, it was always perfectly clear who the enemy was. It was everyone. Everyone's your enemy. And that's why I would make friends of my enemies, whether they knew it or not. That was my goal, was to make friends of my enemies. And so I suppose, in a sense, that's what I'm doing. That's what I do at school, where they're not clear enemies. They're not out to get me. Most people are wanting to work together and be constructive, but certainly life is just PvP. There are laws, right, that stop us from attacking each other because there are consequences, whereas in Ark, there's no consequences. Someone can lock you up, but that's it. You can just leave and go to another server and keep playing however you want to play until they lock you up. But there's hundreds of thousands of servers. But life, you only get one go at it. And so we all play pretty politely. And but there's gotta be a way of showing that aggression has a place, and I can taste the connection. I know it's there. I just don't know how to phrase it or word it or see it quite clearly. So maybe that'll be my job for next time. Maybe it is time to just kind of come. It's been an hour and a half. Maybe I should try and keep these to a brief limit. I don't want to bore you too much. Hopefully you come back if you watch this at all. Clearly no one's been here this entire time. I've just been talking to myself. But maybe someday there will be people who come back and watch this and hear my stories and learn, ask questions. It's possible. That's what I'm hoping for, is some kind of community or connection with my ideas. I really do. Ultimately, why I titled this Raptors Pilgrimage is I want to share my creed, my edict, my mantra, my way of life of being a Raptor with others. Because I have a friend who lost someone that they loved recently, and I was ruthless with them when they came to me to tell me. I mean, at first I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My condolences. I hope you're doing well." Meh, 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 meh. But then I realized everyone's saying that. Everyone's being gentle and kind and saying the same things over and over again. And I realized I'm a different person. And I think what they need from me is a Raptor. And so I was quite clear and open with them because they knew me, that we played Ark together. That's why I knew they would at least understand where I'm coming from. And I was brutally honest that losing someone is a good thing, because it sharpens you. It takes away something that you cherish and that you value. That you're afraid of losing. And you no longer have that fear of losing it because it's gone. So you can live freer without that. And it's a very dark, very, what's the word? I'm trying to express it as a positive, because the way I see it is that it's a positive. Again, it's looking at losses as a win. And it's not to say it's not heartbreaking to lose someone you love. In this case, it was their father. But I've never, part of why I feel awful still, actually, the thing is that I don't feel awful at all. I just understand that someone might feel awful. That's what I mean by that. When I was talking about being a sociopath earlier, I don't feel awful. I know I should feel awful. So I'm aware of it. I just choose not to feel awful because I see the world my way and I don't want to change. Because I like it. It makes me stronger. But what I'm getting at is I've never lost a father. So I don't know if I'm 100% the right person to be giving this advice. I'm giving this advice a priori, without experience. But certainly if I were to lose a father, it's the way I would want to see the world. I would want to get sharper. I'd want to be stronger because of it. I wouldn't want to get weaker and sadder and more upset and question why the world is the way it is. I'd want to say, okay, what else have you got? Throw more at me. And so, that's, but I haven't spoken to them since, and I don't quite know what to say, because I don't know how they've responded to it entirely. They didn't give a whole lot back, and so I don't know if they're appreciative, or if, and this is the far more likely, that my lesson in what I said stuck, but they'll never truly be thankful for what I said, if that makes sense. Meaning they'll always have the lesson, they'll always have the message, but because they're not entirely like me, they won't ever be appreciative. Meaning, like the way I'm appreciative of Zach, who stole from me my first real success in the game and taught me that lesson. I'm appreciative of that lesson. But that's me. That's the way I look at the world. And that's the way that I choose to be grateful for the hardships that we go through. But not everyone's like that. And so this person will forever hear my words, but I accept that they're not me, and they might not be a true raptor, is what I'm getting at. Is raptors, I'm ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't know if it's something that can be taught. I think it's something that people might be able to strive for, if they want to be more like that. But I don't know if it's something like, maybe you have to be born with it. I'd like to think that I could teach it, that I could pass it on. And maybe that'll be the subject of my next, maybe I'll do some studying practice and get to it for tomorrow. But something I want to talk about right before and just introduce you to is this. I don't know if you can read that. There we go. So this is the title of the video. It is in my very own script that I have created because I was very unhappy one day with the fact that the English language isn't phonetically written. And so I came up with a completely phonetic alphabet. It has 37 letters and is beautiful, I think. I think it's extremely satisfying to look at and to read. And I'll be sharing it from time to time. I mean, the title of the video will always be in, it's actually the title of the script is Raptor, which means raptor. A lot of, you'll pick up on that a lot of the things in my life are tied to being a raptor. And I mean, the script, I'm actually working on a language, so actual words with meaning. And the title of that language is Raptor. And, it might be just a jumble, but I don't see it that way. To me, it's sort of the chaos is part of what makes it beautiful. So we'll see. So without further ado, thanks for coming along and being a part of this. Hopefully tomorrow or a week from now, who knows, I'll have more to say. And yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming by. Oh, so again, see, for your own personal again, it's the title of the video. Figure that out for yourself. Anyways, thanks again, and have a great day.